Touchdown, buzzer beater, do it all now. All now, top corner talking home run. Touchdown, buzzer beater, do it all now. All now, top corner like.
All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is Monday, May 4th, 2026, and this is the Monday Report. I'm your host, H. James K., and today we are going to be talking about the Detroit Pistons defeating the Orlando Magic, winning the series and moving on to the Eastern Conference Semifinals. Yes, the 1 seed Detroit Pistons and the 8 seed Orlando Magic went to 7 games because neither team has a second scorer, and boy, we were forced to watch some really bad basketball for 7 games, but at the end of those 7 awful games, the Pistons were victorious. So, the Detroit Pistons defeated the Orlando Magic 116-94 to advance to the Eastern Conference Semifinals, winning the series 4-3. So, as I said, this is a really bad series. It was just bad basketball. Lots of turnovers, not a lot of scoring. Neither team really could do their own thing. It was like watching a college basketball game. Now, admittedly, I kind of like basketball like that, so I guess I'm a fan of bad basketball because defensive, ugly, low-scoring basketball is just, I think, more entertaining. So I kind of enjoyed it, even if I can't admit that it was bad basketball. So we're going to talk about some key players and stats, and we're going to get to some final thoughts and get out of here. I think this is probably going to be 20, 25 minutes. You know how it is. So, key players and stats. Obviously, we got to start with Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris, he played for, he saw the court for 36 minutes. He scored 30 points on 11 of 18 from the shooting from the field. He went 5 of 7 from three-point range. He had 9 rebounds and 2 assists. Tobias Harris balled out. Number 2 scorer for the team, and he was so accurate shooting the ball, and he was really good on defense, and it was one of those where we've been kind of waiting the duration of this series to see who is going to step up and be the second shooter. It's supposed to be Jalen Duren, but Jalen Duren, he had a bad series, but I'll get to him later. So Tobias Harris steps up in a massive way to help Cade Cunningham and the Pistons put away a very scrappy, very physical Orlando Magic team. And I want to assure everyone, we are going to talk about Orlando just as much as we talk about Detroit. Now, the tenor of those conversations might be a little different, but I'm going to be equal opportunity. So, Tobias Harris was really good really good on defense, but his biggest impact, in my opinion, was on offense, where we finally had someone stepping up and doing the scoring thing other than Cade Cunningham. Cade Cunningham had like 45 points in Game 2. He had a ridiculous amount in Game 6, and not Game 2, in Game 5, and another ridiculous amount in Game 6, and he had his own big day in Game 7 as well. But it had always been the Cade Cunningham show, and when his game wasn't working out this series, the Pistons were losing. So it was great to see someone step up on offense and help the offense function outside of just Cade Cunningham making the ball move. So now let's talk about Cade Cunningham. He saw 39 minutes, scored 32 points on 10 of 18 shooting from the field. He went 4 of 6 from 3 with 1 rebound and 12 assists. Now, I said that Tobias Harris stepped up as the number 2 scorer, but the offense still flowed through Cade Cunningham. He had 12 assists, and he was Cade Cunningham. He was his normal self. Now, I will admit, I have to be honest, I didn't watch this game on television because Xfinity is having a carriage dispute with ABC, so ABC wasn't covered on TV. So I had to listen to it on the radio like it was 1937. It was interesting listening to it in the living room on the radio. It's like, man, time to listen, time to sit down in the living room and listen to our programs. It's like it was a surreal experience, but I got to tell you, I almost enjoyed basketball more listening to it. I don't know what that says about modern basketball broadcasting, but I really enjoyed it. And yes, there was a lot of commercial breaks, but the commercials weren't as ridiculously annoying, I guess. So it was a pleasant experience. But I will admit, I haven't actually seen any of the games, so I can only talk based on what I heard on the broadcast. And I paid attention pretty close. So I'm hoping that I got the whole story, but there might become times where I'm a little light on substance because, well, I couldn't watch the game because I refuse to watch sports in a bar. If I'm going to watch sports, I'm going to watch sports where I can listen to the commentary and take in the game and not sit at a table from 20 feet away and watch a blurry picture on a small screen. Either way, that's getting beside the point. So, Cade Cunningham was his usual self. 39 points, 39 minutes, 32 points, 10 of 18. It is interesting that he was only one make shy of matching Tobias Harris, and he was one make and attempt shy of Tobias Harris from 3 as well. It shows you how the two of them were really the 1-2 punch of the Pistons offense. And for the Magic, I'll get to the Magic and their offense later, but it's very clear that their defense wasn't able to deal with the physicality and style of play of the Pistons offense without key players. And with a second scorer stepping up, that really, really, really becomes apparent because, in Game 5 and Game 6, it was kind of the Cade Cunningham show. And those games were not Game 6. Game 6 was an absolute clown show collapse from the Magic, but Game 5 was damn close. I watched that game. That game was damn close, and it was very clear that the Magic could hang with the Pistons playing that way. So it's great that Tobias Harris and Cade Cunningham could be that 1-2 punch that the Pistons sorely need. More on that later. So let's get to some other players. Jalen Duren, 37 minutes, 15 points, 5 of 9 shooting from the field. He did not attempt a 3. Now, admittedly, he plays center, so that's not too uncommon. He had 15 rebounds and 3 assists. Jalen Duren in this series played himself out of a max contract. There is no other way to put it. He played horribly in Game 1, Game 2, Game 3, Game 4, Game 5. He was dreadful. He was a literal liability on offense for 5 games. It was at the point where people was like, should they just not play him or give him bench player minutes because he's such a liability? It was one of those where people online were literally criticizing JB Bickerstaff's lineup choices and his substitution choices because depth players on the bench who had been playing well during the regular season weren't playing, and he was sticking with guys like Karis LeVert and Jalen Duren who were just not a factor on offense. So Jalen Duren, it was good to see him kind of get back to his game. 15 points, a lot of rebounds. He played his game on offense and defense and actually was a factor in the game. Now, admittedly, for a guy who is supposed to be the Pistons' number 2 guy, number 2 scorer, and the second option when the offense doesn't have Cade Cunningham on the court, he falls woefully short. He does. He is not a second option. He's a really good center, but you cannot run an offense in the modern NBA with a center who can't score, especially if that guy is supposed to be your second option. I remember back in the early days of the Golden State Warriors dynasty, they had Andrew Bogut at center, and he was a good center, but he wasn't the number 2 scorer. It was Steph and Clay. If it wasn't Steph Curry and Andrew Bogut. So it's one of these things where Jalen Duren has walked like a number 2, talked like a number 2, been assumed to be the number 2 guy on the Pistons, and he just wasn't that guy at all in the series. So it was good to see him kind of get back to his game in Game 7. Now, we'll talk about the Orlando situation and why some of this happened, but for Duren, it was a relief to see him get back into form. The next we got to talk about is Ausar Thompson. 34 minutes, 8 points, 4 of 5 from the field. He did not attempt a 3. He had 4 rebounds and 4 assists. Now, Ausar Thompson is a wing, so you would like to see more 3-point shots out of him then you would like to see any 3-point shots from Asar Thompson, any at all. And you'd like to see more shots in general from him after 34 minutes on the court. So I was a little disappointed in him, but he wasn't a liability like he has been. So that was an improvement. That's how I keep saying liability, because so many players during this series were an active detriment to the offense for the first 4 games of the series. So guys like Jalen Duren, Tobias Harris, Karis LeVert, Asar Thompson, guys who were just really not playing the way that they should be playing. And, there were bench guys who were the same way, but so it was good to see Asar Thompson kind of get back into form a little bit, even if you would like to see a little more offensive production from him. And the last guy I want to talk about from the Pistons is Denise Jenkins. 29 minutes off the bench, 16 points, 5 of 8 from the field, 4 of 3 from 3-point range, 3 rebounds, 5 assists. What a stellar performance from Denise Jenkins. Dennis? I'm going to say Dennis, sorry. Dennis Jenkins. And he's a guy who is kind of known for being one of the, bench guy 3-point shooters for the Pistons. And what a huge day from him. Coming off the bench with 29 minutes, a lot of offensive productions, good solid defense. It's one of those things where so often during this series, the bench was just a total no-show. So it was good to see him having a positive impact, especially with guys like Kevin Huerter out. Kevin Huerter did not play, and he's another one of these guys who is known to be kind of a bench scorer. So it was good to see Jenkins getting in the action and making a really big contribution to the offense. Now we got to talk about Orlando. Key players from Orlando. Paolo Banchero. That's it. He had 42 minutes, 38 points, 14 of 25 from the field, 4 of 7 from 3, 9 rebounds, 6 assists. So Orlando, much like the Pistons, the Orlando Magic need a scorer. They need a second scorer desperately. The core of their team does not have a second option scorer, and it becomes so glaringly obvious when you look at them play, because yes, when they had Franz Wagner on the court for the first 4 games, they were given the Pistons all they could handle. That's totally accurate. But when Franz Wagner, who wasn't an offensive juggernaut in his own right at all, when he goes out and the Pistons can kind of play their game, it becomes clear that no matter how much Paolo Banchero does. I mean, he had more points than Cade Cunningham did in Game 5, and Cade had 44 points. Paolo Banchero had 45 in Game 5 in a losing effort. He played for 42 minutes in this game. He had 38 points. Paolo Banchero did everything the Magic could have asked from him. And at the end of the day, it didn't matter at all, because even with him on the court, all they had was a fastball. Just fastball. They threw 80 fastballs. And yeah, it's hard to hit your heat. You hit a guy's heat, but you got to have a curveball in there, or a changeup, or a slider. Hell, even a knuckleball. You got to have a second pitch. It's a boxer who only has his jab. Jab. No, you got to be able to pair that jab up with a second punch. You have to have an uppercut, or an overhand right, or a right hand cross. You have to have a second punch to make a combo, to make the 1-2 punch actually work. If it's just the Paolo Banchero show, the Magic were adrift offensively, and they were for the last 3 games. Yeah, Game 5 was close, but Game 6 was horrible. It was an absolute blowout. They had 11 points in the third quarter of Game 6. They had 8 points in the fourth quarter of Game 6. And in Game 7, it wasn't much better. Yeah, they were, quote, hanging around, but the game, in retrospect, wasn't all that close in the second half. Hell, it wasn't all that close in the second quarter. Even though the Magic were leading after the first quarter, 22-20. So for Banchero, he did everything you want for him. You can't fault him at all. He played pretty good on defense. He was everything. He was all they had on offense. So, I mean, it's you feel bad for the guy to an extent because he's just the only option. You know, it's like when Stafford was the only show in town for the Lions. They had no effective run game. The defense was inconsistent. You had Calvin Johnson, but that was kind of it. It was just up to Stafford to make it work. And those teams were bad because when a team has one tool, they don't succeed. It's the teams that have the depth and have the ability to mix up and to play multiple ways. You know, good basketball teams, like good football teams and good baseball teams, can get into a high-scoring, you know, barn burner kind of game, and they can also get dragged into the mud and win a really low-scoring, close game. Good teams can do both. For Orlando, the only chance they had in the last 3 games was hoping the Pistons played the worst possible game and them playing the best possible game they could, and even then having to hope that the bad breaks broke their way and gave them just enough of an ability to eke out a win. So with it just being Paolo Banchero for Orlando, they had no chance in the last 3 games. Now, let's get on to my final thoughts. I got a couple of them. Tobias Harris and Jalen Duren finding their groove in the final 2 games of the series is what will give the Pistons a real chance to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. With the 2 of them finally being positive contributors, the Pistons were able to play their brand of ball again. Tobias Harris was a plus 7.1 when on the court in the first round. Now, for those of you who don't know, plus minus is an analytics a metric for basketball where it's point differential positive negative when on the court. So when Tobias Harris was on the court, the Pistons were plus 7.1 points over the Magic during the series. By contrast, when Jalen Duren was on the court, he was a dismal plus 1.6. Now, there are limitations to plus minus. Plus minus is not a good one-game metric. It is insufficient for anything other than kind of long-term. How do I put this? It's enough for measuring like long-term success over a series or a season or that kind of thing. It is woefully insufficient for single games. So I've got an image here, and I'm going to read some statistics for you. So this is the plus minus for Magic players and Piston players during the series. So Cade Cunningham was a plus 22.2 for the series, meaning they outscored the Magic 22.2 points when he was on the court. Franz Wagner, an Orlando Magic player, was plus 10.9 when he was on the court, and he was absent for games 5, 6, and 7, allowing the Pistons to come back. I'm going to talk about him in a second. Asar Thompson was plus 9.1 when on the court. Now getting into the negative portion, Paolo Banchero was a negative 0.4 when on the court because they obviously lost the series, but that just tells you how even him giving everything he could, he's a net negative when the team is playing so poorly. And I'll get to this. Anthony Black, another player from the Magic, minus 3.6. Desmond Bane, a big player for the Magic, minus 5.5. Wendell Carter Jr., minus 5.6. Jalen Suggs, who was supposed to be like their Jalen Duren, like their number 2 guy, negative 23.7. Yeah. So when you look at the plus minus of these teams, you can kind of see how these players are affecting the outcome of the game. Duren's, I'm going to pivot back to Jalen Duren about this because he was a dismal plus 1.6 for the series. His horrible play in the first 4 games of the series should prevent him from getting a max contract from the Pistons. He's going to be a free agent this year, and during the regular season, it was very clear. I was like, oh yeah, the Pistons are going to give him a max contract. Now, the max contract is somewhere in like the $30 to $40 million range, I think. It's the maximum amount they can pay him based on the way their collective bargaining agreement works. So, everyone just assumed he was going to get a max contract, but it has become clear that he is not worth a $30+ million max deal. He just isn't worth it, because while I think he's a great center and he's huge for them on defense, you cannot rely on him to be the second option, especially when Cade's not on the court. So I think he has played himself out of a max deal. Now, do I hope he comes back to the Pistons next year? Abso-freaking-lutely. I hope he's back long term. I just wouldn't pay him a max deal, even if we go all the way and win a championship, just because I don't think a player like him, who cannot be relied upon to be a consistent number 2 guy, should be making max deal money. So yeah. On that same note, the Pistons desperately need a second scorer who can be relied upon when Cade Cunningham is off the floor. Desperately hoping for Tobias Harris, Jalen Duren, or someone from the bench like Dennis Jenkins or Kevin Huerter to get hot and carry the load when he's off the court is not sustainable. While I think they might be able to kind of scratch and claw their way to the Eastern Conference Finals, maybe they can even get to the NBA Finals. Maybe. I don't know if I'm super certain about that, just because they had so much trouble with the Magic, who were kind of not great, and they have no realistic second scorer, and you don't play your bench as much in the playoffs, so it's kind of what your starting 5 has got. You kind of run what you brung, so to speak, and we're not bringing a lot of offense into these playoffs, so it is desperately obvious that the Pistons need a second scorer. Now, do you go and trade for someone big, or do you pay top dollar to get a second option guy to play off Cade Cunningham? Probably. I don't know who that would be, but it's one of those where you definitely have to go get somebody, and they got to be someone who, and you may have to compromise on the fact that, they may not be as good on defense, but you desperately need scoring, because you cannot rely on the other team to play the worst possible game they can play every week to beat every game to beat them. You just can't rely on that, especially when you're not going to get consistent play from your second, third, and fourth scorers. So yeah, the Pistons desperately need that. Now, for some more negative news. The Pistons need to part ways with Caris LeVert. So, Caris LeVert is a bench player for the Pistons. He was minus 9.2 when on the court. He was a defensive liability. He struggled with turnovers, and he completely vanished on offense when on the court. He was an active liability in the truest sense of the word. When he was on the court, the Pistons would blow leads, fall behind, the offensive flow would just disappear. So, Caris LeVert, yeah, he's, it's like saying we need to fire the backup center. Yes, but for a guy who's a bench player, who you need to be able to rely on those guys to do pinch duty and to come off the bench and be contributors, he's just not a contributor. He was a DNP in the last game. By the coach's choice. The coach said, yeah, don't practice this week. They just didn't bring him to the game. They didn't even bring him to the bench. They just said, yeah, you're not going to be involved. So yeah, Caris LeVert has got to go. That's probably not a big thing, but Caris LeVert has got to go during the offseason because they stopped playing him. He only had 5 minutes in Game 6. And in that he managed no points, shooting 2 field goals and a 3-pointer and making none of them. He had no rebounds, no assists. He was a total non-factor in Game 6, and he was a DNP in Game 7. And they played better than they had in the playoffs this year when he wasn't even there. So, what can you do? What else is there to say? Bye-bye. Paolo Banchero deserves a second star to operate the offense with him. Get a load of this. So when I was going over stats, I realized this. Paolo Banchero led his team in minutes, points, field goals made, field goals attempted, 3-pointers made, 3-pointers attempted, rebounds, and assists in Game 7. He led them in every major statistical category. He was the entirety of the Orlando Magic's offense. Yeah, he needs a second guy, desperately. It's not fair for a guy as talented and great as Paolo Banchero to be the only man in town. And it's one of those where if you don't think you can get a star, maybe you trade him while his value is high, get a whole bunch of picks, and actually build a core with more than one star. Because right now you have him and nobody else, and you don't really have a lot of assets to trade, or cap space, or picks. It's a bad situation for Orlando, because they're not just like, oh, they're opening their window. They are in their window, where their core is supposed to be, they're an up-and-coming core who's going to win them a championship. I didn't see any championship team from this Orlando Magic squad. Now, they were a team that should not have been an 8 seed. They had injuries this year that prevented them from being probably a 4th or 5th seed. That is completely true. But, at the same time, it is so clear and obvious that they are not a championship caliber team when he's the only show in town. So they either need to trade him and rebuild their core from the ground up, or they need to sell the farm, sell someone else, make some crazy move to get him a second score, because he desperately needs it. He's too talented to play like this. It's not fair to him. Also, talking about the Magic, without Franz Wagner, the Orlando Magic had no chance of closing out the Pistons. They had the Pistons dead to rights 3-1, and they lost Game 5, Game 6, Game 7, because Franz Wagner had some kind of hip injury. He was instrumental in clogging up the middle of the lane on defense, preventing the Pistons from operating much of their offense. The Pistons do a lot in the paint, inside the three-point line. They do a lot of striking to the rim, or pull up shots from for two. They do a lot of that, and him playing on defense for the Magic was super critical. Unlike Cade Cunningham played horribly in game 4. He played horribly. He had like 26 turnovers. It was one of these things. I think it was game 4. He had more turnovers in that game than he'd had in his entire career in a single game. So it's one of those things where he was huge. Franz Wagner was huge for the Orlando Magic. And when they lost him, suddenly the Pistons could play their offense. They didn't have as much trouble on defense. They were more physical. They turned the ball over less. There was less disruption for their flow. He was everything for the Magic, and without him, they had no chance of closing out the series. They just didn't. And that is unfortunate if you're an Orlando fan, because it's like you beat the Pistons in 5 if he's healthy. Easily. You beat the Pistons in 5, and then you probably get bounced in the second round. Instead, you become one of the most embarrassing playoff performances in the history of basketball. You had a 1 seed dead to rights, 3-1 lead, and you choked it away, and there's talk that they might fire their head coach. I kind of support that, because there is no excuse for the Magic to play that poorly, and they collapsed in multiple games. Game 5, they had a bad sequence where they just kind of lost a huge lead. In Game 6, they completely disappeared in the second half, even though they were blowing out the Pistons in the first half. And in Game 7, they were keeping it close, but they couldn't get ahead of the Pistons before finally just disintegrating in the fourth quarter. So if you're the Magic, you got some soul searching to do, because you got to get it. You have a shopping list of guys that you need to do something about. You need to get some guys out of there, like Jalen Suggs for the Magic. He was one of these guys who was supposed to be a big deal for the Magic, and he was dreadful. He was like a negative 20-something on plus minus. Let me look that up. I can look that up right now. Jalen Suggs. Yeah, he was negative 23. He was minus 23.7 in plus minus. He was 13 points worse than any other player in the entire series on both sides. He was by far the worst player for the Orlando Magic. And for the Orlando Magic, he is supposed to be a big-time contributor, a smart guy who helps make the offense flow. Well, that didn't work out. So if you're the Orlando Magic, you have some stuff to work on. Now for the Pistons, yeah, you got some stuff to do in the offseason. You got some things to think about. But for right now, you're focusing on who you're going to play. I'm recording this at 9:15. on Sunday, obviously, because I record these on Sunday. Let's check in on the Toronto Raptors versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. Right now in the third quarter, it is Cleveland 60, Toronto 50. So the Pistons are going to be playing one of those two teams when they finish up their Game 7. And the next game, I think, is on like Tuesday, I think. Don't quote me on that. So for the Pistons, you're just trying to like get healthy, calm down, and get some rest after a long, physical, grueling series with Orlando, and focus forward and just say, well, we'll deal with the offseason stuff in the offseason. For right now, we got to beat Toronto or Cleveland, and that's the only focus. Now, part of me would prefer Cleveland because I just don't think Cleveland has these. I just don't think Cleveland can handle the Pistons' physicality, to be honest with you. So I'm kind of hoping for Cleveland, and I think it'd be a good series, to be honest with you. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with the Pistons. I don't watch a lot of basketball, but I find that I enjoy the hell out of basketball. You know what I mean? So I might watch more basketball going forward because I shouldn't say I enjoy physical basketball. So like the way Michigan played this year, the way the Pistons played, that's the kind of basketball I like. I don't like basketball games where it's 136 to 133 and it's just you score, both teams score a bazillion, no defense, no effort, no physicality. I hate that kind of basketball. But games like what the Pistons play where it's just physical, drag you into the mud and punch each other in the face for 2 hours. I love that kind of basketball. So I really enjoy watching the Pistons. And it's not just because they're good. I just enjoy this style of play a lot. So I'll probably be watching more. I'll definitely be watching the Pistons during this playoff run because absolutely you got. I mean, the Pistons are the 1 seed and they might be able to do something here. So very exciting things. So update on my book. Don't really have an update. I am starting the second book this week. We're moving on to the second book. We've officially turned the page on the first book. Website's set up. Social medias are all set up. So all that stuff is launching June 1st. Sometime during the summer, I'm going to start the process of getting a merch store set up. Kind of the same place we were last week, to be honest with you. For those of you watching on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and everywhere else that podcasts are available, thank you. Please spread the word and help people find the podcast. For those of you watching on YouTube, please comment, leave a like, hit the bell icon to subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get notifications so you don't miss an episode. I'm going to be launching my website June 1st. Look out for that. That's going to be big. I'm going to have a whole bunch of stuff on the website that you're going to want to check out. We're going to have a newsletter. We're going to have Song of the Week and stuff like that. So it's going to be a good time. All right. My name is H. James K. Thank y'all for tuning in. Until next time.